The future of game development. You want to know what the future is? It's a fucking graveyard. Everybody getting fired. AI does everything. And the only games are gacha waifu collector games. That's it. That's just the way it is, guys. That's just the way it is.
And I can safely say I am concerned for the future of gaming.
Ooh. Jump into the Arkhamverse.
Batman
fishing, Arkham Shadow is a MetaQuest 3 exclusive VR game coming.
Bro, dude, thank you, bro. That's exactly what I do. Every time I hear like, oh, it's in VR, I'm like, oh. It's like every time that I can see a game, like the only game that's good that looks like it's from VR is Dark and Darker. That game is basically the same quality as a VR game, but it's actually good. And also, it's not a VR game.
Later this year.
So when I say I am concerned, that is, of course, a very incendiary statement. I both am and I'm not. Why? What I'm actually concerned about, and I'm not, and concerned isn't the right word. What is clearly happening is it looks like AAA is taking a breather. Looks like AAA is taking a breather.
Our industry is evolving and changing. Smaller teams and new creators are finding incredible success. New ideas, new teams, and smaller creators can and will break through.
We didn't get any announcements of any major AAA titles next year or the year after. And more importantly, what that shows us is the rest of this year, not necessarily the rest, next year in particular, is going to be interesting. Now,
I feel like I don't really give a fuck if there's a AAA game that comes out or not. Like, I just, like, am I the only person, like, I don't really care, bro. Like, yeah, like, it doesn't really matter that much to me. Like, if the game's good, then it's a good game. Like, if the game's bad, then it's a bad game. Like, I've put so many hours on games that are, like, small indie games, it doesn't even make a difference. And if there's a really big game that comes out, like, you know, another Elden Ring, I'm like, awesome, that's so cool. But it's not like it's always going to be like that, you know? Usually it's not.
Interesting doesn't mean bad. Interesting does not mean bad. Because here's the thing. Think of game dev in this case like a forest, right? And the thing about forests is that trees get big and then they go out. And when they get big and get out, they create shade. And that shade means that little plants don't get a chance to grow and become big trees themselves. So what's happening now is that forest, those big AAA trees are falling. They have been falling and now they are falling. So what's going on is even though the forest is a little emptier right now, there's a lot more opportunity for sun. And there's a lot more ground that's getting it.
Halfway through this analogy or metaphor, I was like, this is stupid. But that part really makes sense. No, that part, like, he cooked. Yeah, that works. I was like, what are you talking about?
And that means that indie devs that don't need all those resources have a lot more room and a lot more money that can be sent their way. And that could be really great for them. Because now they have an opportunity to thrive in an environment where they don't have nearly as much competition. And that could be great for gamers. So that part is kind of awesome. So it's the thing that's really interesting to think about is it's kind of hard to see the forest for the trees right now because it's kind of hard to see the cloud because when you're in a cloud, you don't see the cloud. It's only when you're outside of it that you see it. And what it's looking like is we may be in the cloud right now of the gaming sphere actually going through a metamorphosis.
It's changing a lot because the problem is that I think that these game development studios have gotten so big and like now they have people that they hire who are experts on like the way a flag would move in the wind, like water buoyancy. Like these they don't need to be there. Like they really, like this doesn't matter. Like nobody gives a shit about this. Like what are you doing? Like it's bloated, right? Yeah, you're hiring. It's like, and this is the problem, right? It's like, and this is like a fucking, it's like gravity, right? It's like if you're a big planet, you're gonna bring in other stuff, you know, and like, you know, attract them into your gravitational pull. It's like a physical fucking, a property of physics. And it's happening with these game development studios where like bigger studios have a propensity to just keep getting bigger. Like they're just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you ask yourself, like, what's really the value that's being added here? and it becomes like, you know, like going from like maybe 500 to 600 people doesn't increase the quality in the same level that going from 100 to 200 does. Just straight up. And that's what I think is happening.
Large pillars that have existed for decades actually tumbling, and all of these indies are now going to have a chance to succeed. Now we have 25 million PAL worlds.
I feel
these
like
indies are now going to have a chance.
Let me see. So Square Enix, I think, is doing well. Nintendo's doing well. Activision Blizzard is like super hit and miss. Sony is like super hit and miss. Epic Games hit and miss. Like Ubisoft mostly miss. EA, I mean, they do FIFA. Like FIFA is like really like you should just EA should just rename to FIFA. That's probably the game that they make all their money from. So like besides that, who gives a shit?
Actually tumbling, and all of these indies are now going to have a chance
Fortnite.
to succeed.
Fortnite.
Now we have 25 million PAL worlds.
Yeah.
We've got, you know, million sale core keepers.
Yep.
We've got the Terrarias.
Yep.
We've got the Haunted Chocolatiers.
The hell is this shit?
You're like, we've got all these awesome little tiny titles that are becoming wildly successful.
That's because people like just playing a game. That's literally it. People just want to play a good game, and it doesn't need to have all of the things that people in these really big bloated studios provide. So it's like all of these people just want to have a, you know, they want to like turn this game into this like big work of art and everything, and like it's almost like they're making games for other game developers or people that are in the industry rather than making them for an actual customer. Like, you're not really meeting the needs of the customer. You're doing what you learned how to do in school.
Kyle is amazing. Wait, is it you? It's like Auto Battler plus action? Bro, if this is like a roguelite where you like have builds and stuff, this could be amazing.
That game was basically Dynasty Warriors for white people. Like, that's pretty much it. But yeah,
totally.
Game looked pretty cool.
Hey, there it is. Oh, it's co-op too.
The little prototype of just a character holding the device.
Oh, how
having
cool.
an endless running motion and jumping at the same time as seeing it in 2D and 3D.
And then the other part of it.
Man.
Yeah, somebody says, remember whenever Elden Ring came out and other devs criticized their UI? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I fundamentally believe, and I know this might sound crazy, I fundamentally believe that a lot of these developers don't actually understand what gamers want. They don't really get it. UI is so important. It is important, but like the UI also wasn't bad. It's like they're criticizing it from a frame of reference that is, this is like, oh, I learned this in school. And like every UI can always be better. And I think that there are bad UIs. Like, for example, I think that some games, like especially like games that are made on console then ported to PC, like Monster Hunter World, like the UI isn't as good. It isn't. And I think that it could definitely be improved. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to go and be like, this is what like the game's bad because of this. It's just annoying to learn and figure out. And it's just like, that's the problem that these people have, is like, they don't understand what matters. And they start thinking about like all of these like irrelevant details.
Dude. Yeah. I'm going to be blunt. I'm not even super interested in this game, but this tech and these guys are awesome.
Yeah, it's a cool idea.
Man, I don't know why jiggling these balls is getting me off so much, but this is great. And yeah, that's kind of awesome because frankly, those games are fantastic. Even better for us, this means that the people in a lot of ways that really love games because they just love them are the ones that are going to be making our games.
And that's also another really big factor that a lot of people don't talk about, is that like a lot of the AI and Unreal 5 and like advances in technology and like development, like things that help development make it easier, it does two things. Number one, it lets people who could never make a game. And on the flip side, it also lets people who should never make a game. That's how you get all the NFT games. So again, rising tide floats all boats. Everybody now, it's a lot easier for them to make games, and that is a good thing in some cases and a bad thing in others.
The ones that are going to be getting our money. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
It's great.
Nice. You may already be playing our first game.
Mars First.
Mars
Awesome.
First Logistics.
And frustrating as fuck.
We're Trinket Studios, creators of Battleship Brigade, and this is our card.
Oh, I played this Battleship Brigade. This is actually really good too.
We are Studio NE%, and we're making the Marsfield Archives, a game about building and exploring connections.
Hi. How are you going to build a social game called NE%? Are you speed running social stuff? Like,
and a ton of bosses to beat.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that some of the ideas they have for these games aren't very good, but I think it's good that people are able to pursue their ideas, if that makes sense. Like, even though I don't really, like, I see a lot of these games, especially, like, all of the, like, you know, quote, cozy games. I'm just, like, cozy, for me, is just, like, another word for boring. Oh, this is a boring game. Oh, wow, great. That's just what I wanted. It's a boring game. But, yeah.
Hey, I'm Hostbomb,
Other people
game
like
director at Hostcrops, and this is...
It's exciting to think that game dev could be starting to shift a bit to where all these billions of dollars of resources that are going into them could maybe start going to the people that actually are like us and love playing and making games. And not just to the giant companies that are taking that money, making it a random number on a spreadsheet, and then being proud of that number instead of the product it represents.
Well, the problem is, like, the games are over-designed. And I think that, like, again, it's just like big studios getting bigger over time. So you have, like, all these people that are like, oh yeah, but the facial features of the characters, like, nobody cares about that. It doesn't matter. It's completely irrelevant. Like, it's nice, right? But, like, is it really worth, because, like, you think about how much money that it takes to do stuff like that, and, like, what's really the return on your investment there? Like, are you really making your money back whenever you make a game like this? Not really. You're probably not, and that's why these studios are falling apart. So that's the issue. It's like you have, like, all these little, like, minor things, like facial recognition, like hiring people for all of this. And, like, does this even make the game 5% better for most people? I feel like it doesn't.
I'm optimistic. I'm not naive, but I am optimistic. And I do have faith that this is, at the end of the day, a brutal restructuring going on right now.
Well, it has to happen. Because, and here's another reason why it's happening. It's also happening because gamers won't pay more money for games. People don't want to spend $70 for video games. And eventually this will become the norm. And I think that within our lifetimes, if you're anywhere around my age, there will be a time where we will look back fondly at a $100 game. It will happen because that's the way inflation works. And eventually we will be in that position. This will happen eventually. However, I think that people don't feel like they're getting the same value. It's like even a $60 game 10 years ago, people are perceiving a higher value from that $60 game from 10 years ago than a $70 game now, like on a one-to-one. So if you think about it from that perspective, a lot more of this makes sense because these people aren't getting the feeling of, they're not getting their money's worth. Like, I think nobody would have a problem paying $70 for Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3. Realistically, they probably wouldn't. Or Grand Theft Auto 5. Or 6 or whatever. Yeah, 6. Grand Theft Auto 6. But most games are not those games. They're just not. But they're priced as if they are, and it's just unsustainable. Because people don't want to spend a higher box price. People hate microtransactions, in the West at least, right? Eastern audiences seem to like them more. But in the West, people are not fans of that. So how do you make money?
That in a lot of it's one of those things where
you have to scale down.
What's going on in game dev right now is terrible. We're seeing really talented, good people lose their jobs. We're seeing studios close down. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of the people...
It's sad that happens, and I can feel bad for those individual people, but making a bad product does have consequences. And if you make a product that doesn't sell well and it doesn't resonate with an audience, then guess what happens? Well, then that product fails in the market, and people have to lose their jobs. It's like if you have a lemonade stand, and nobody's buying your lemonade because it doesn't taste good, then you're going to eventually have to get rid of the stand. Or you're going to have to do something else. So, I mean, there it is. It's not that complicated.
Cause that pain are not suffering from it. But, and I'm talking about like the people at the heads of these corporations making the decision. Like they're not the ones that are getting fired. They're not the ones getting their company shut down. So although it is a terrible, terrible time, just keep in mind that hopefully there will be a silver lining here. And more importantly, what I think a lot of people are seeing that love money is that maybe there's better and other industries to make it in that are a lot easier to do.
Yeah, they can go back to, you know, trying to make money off of metaverse or something like that and stop ruining video games. But I think the truth is that what the real future is going to be is a lot more venture capital and angel investment into smaller game companies with a higher ceiling that has like a bigger rate of return with people betting on long shots. I think that's what's going to happen a lot more often. You know, one of the big issues, the publicly traded game company? Yeah, exactly. It's not that Eastern gamers like microtransactions. It's just that they rarely complain. Yeah, well then, I mean, they still buy them, right? Like, they buy them more. And if they're not complaining, that means that they at least dislike them less, right? Look what Bethesda did, getting money for player-created mods. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen a lot more, is you're going to see people that are, you know, these smaller studios that are being funded directly. And I think that, like, obviously, like, Ko's part of, I think, like, A16Z, which is, like, an investment fund. Like, he actually even is a partner with them, and so he does this himself. So he knows this because he's doing it. So that's, and the reason why is because that's the new way of doing things, it seems. Because that works a lot better than just giving, you know, endless millions of dollars to some big studio. And if you lose, like, think about it, right? If you have a game and this game makes $40 million and you spent $200 million on it, you lost $160 million. Think about how many fuck-ups and how many failed return on investments would you have to make in order to add an amount up to $160 million. Think about it. Right? Let's do a little math, right? So 160 million divided by, let's say you're going to give a company $100,000. Let's say $150,000. You can fund over 1,000 games. Sorry, it was in the way. You can fund over 1,000 games in the time that it would take you for you to fail at one AAA game. You see what I'm saying? One big risk versus a few smaller risks? Yeah. It's also possible people that grew up at those big studios just got older, priority shifted, etc. I don't really think that's the case because the same studios, like, for example, Nintendo is probably still doing very well. Capcom is like, bro, whenever I was growing up as a kid, Capcom arcade machines were like, oh my God, they're Street Fighter, right? So I don't agree with that. I don't think that it's like, oh, people got older because Capcom is hiring more people. Rockstar is hiring. I don't know about Rockstar hiring, but I know Capcom is. So I think the problem, Mega Man, yeah, the problem is not aging audience because a good game is going to bring in, like, I bet there's a lot of kids that play the new Street Fighter game.
So, like, hopefully, the people that are in game dev just for the money are looking at everything going around right now and going, maybe I should go somewhere else. And that way, maybe the people that are that are actually making the games can keep making them. And we'll see.
It's just that simple.
I hope you had fun today. It's fun for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's what's going to happen a lot more often, too. It's going to become way more common that you're going to have these smaller development studios that are, like, much more small in scale and everything like that. Those are going to be the studios that are really going to pop off. Because, like, they have so much more potential, and they're also not bloated with, like, massive development costs. You know, they have, like, 70 people working. Like, think about it, like 150 people versus, like, 1,000 people. Like, and that's how much these AAA game studios have. They have 1,000 people. Like, that's insane. That's so big. So, yeah, that's what I would say. The Monkey Island guy was right all along. Lethal Company is a great example of a game that popped off made by one dude in his basement. Well, there's a lot of examples for that. I mean, the truth is that that's still a very rare occurrence, and it's not like it happens all the time. But at the same time, it still does happen sometimes. And I feel like that's probably a safer bet, because also there isn't like a binary of like you either, what do you call it? You either like lose all of your money or you become Power World, right? Like this isn't a binary. There are a lot of games that make $10,000 or games that break even or they lose $5,000. Okay, well, you invested $150,000. You are negative $5,000. Like, yeah, it's not great, but like that's what happens, right? So you can just keep going. So like whenever you think about the return and then being able to reinvest the return into another project, then like that 1,000 games that I was talking about, it becomes like 4,000, right? Because you're not able to just like, you're able to like kind of like keep cycling that money around. Big companies also overspend a lot on marketing. I think that they do too. And I think that's a great idea because they're the ones paying me. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that they should be overspending on marketing and keep paying streamers tons of money to play games. Really, really great idea. It's just good for everybody, you know, especially, by the way, it's especially good for me. So yeah.